Welcome to May. We're in a new month. This is the divine ideal, the month of May. The theme for the month of May is the divine ideal. Aren't you glad we're out of fierce grace? Good Lord. That was just so much work. So May is the month of the divine ideal, and today is knowing what we know. Knowing what we know. So how do we know anything, really? How do we know anything? You know, there's different types of knowing. There's experiential knowing, where we directly experience something, we learn from it, and we gain wisdom and knowledge. Put a hand on a hot stove, we learn very fast, right? We learn really, really fast. Cause and effect, boom. Direct, natural consequences. We do something, something happens, we feel something, we learn from it. It's a type of learning. We feel, we learn something from it. But feeling is limited to our senses. It's a physical knowing. You know, we have our five senses, but they're ground in the physical world. Touch and taste and smell and sight and hearing. They're great senses, but they're all ground in our physical bodies, and they are subject to the limitations of the physical world, right? Our eyes can only see a certain wavelength of light. Insects see way more than we do. They see extreme wavelengths of light. You know, our ears hear only a certain frequency of sound. Dogs have way better hearing than we do. Other animals can scent things from miles and miles away that we can't. So our senses, as good as they are limited. But it is a way that we know things. We know things through our body, through our senses. Another way of knowing is cognitive knowing. We learn things, we apply that knowledge to something else, something that is similar. A equals B, and B equals C, therefore A equals C. We extrapolate knowledge from things that are similar. We can reason things out. Seeing someone else touch the hot stove can teach us something, right? We don't have to touch it ourselves. We can imagine what would happen if, and then we can bring it out to a logical conclusion. We don't have to get hit by the car in order to understand what would happen if we run out in traffic when the car is coming, because we can reason it out to its logical conclusion. We extrapolate information. We learn facts and figures. You know, we memorize our times tables. A lot of times we memorize our times tables before we even understand what those calculations represent. But we gain knowledge that way. But our cognitive knowing also is limited. It is limited by the facts. And what we know about facts is that they're always changing. Facts are only facts that we currently understand in the present day situations. And facts change. We know facts all the time that turn out to be wrong, don't we? I mean, we knew the fact that the earth was flat. Wrong. We knew the fact that the sun revolved around the earth. Wrong. There's a lot of facts we knew that turned out to be wrong. Lord Kelvin in 1895 said this. He said, "Heavier than air flying machines are impossible." Okay, that was wrong. In 1899, Charles Duell said, "Everything that can be invented has been invented." He was the commissioner of the U.S. Patent Office. And Pierre Paget, who was the professor of physiology at Toulouse University, said this in 1892. He said, "Louis Pasteur's theory of germs is ridiculous fiction." And I'm here to tell you that's incorrect also. So there are plenty of people who knew the facts, but were ignorant of the truth. right? Facts depend on the information of the age. Facts are always changing as we learn more, as we experiment more, as we test more, as we prove more. The facts change. So how else do we know? There is experiential, there is cognitive, and then there is intuitive knowing. Knowing what we know. Webster defines intuition as this: direct perception of truth, independent of any reasoning process. The quality or ability of having such direct perception or insight. Intuition in the New Thought Dictionary is defined as this: inner awareness of spiritual truths without conscious process of thought. Intuition is when we know we know. We know we know. And in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes says this: intuition is God in man, revealing to him the realities of being. And just as instinct guides the animal, so intuition guides the human, if we would let it. Ooh, it's that last little part that gets us, isn't it? If we would let it. Intuition is always revealing itself to us. We are always being spoken to by that still small voice. It is always in our head. It is always willing to communicate with us. Are we listening? Are we listening? You know, just yesterday, and this is a trivial little example, but just yesterday I was going to a deli to get some carne asada for today to cook on the grill, and I grabbed my purse. My daughter was coming with me. I'm walking out of the house, and I get this little voice in my head that says, go past the bank and pull out cash for the purchase. Okay, whatever, you know. So I get in the car, and the bank is in one direction, and the deli is in the opposite direction. So what did I do? I took that perfectly God idea, and I went, nah, that's all right. Last time I bought there, I used my bank card, no problem. They have a bank card. They have a machine. So I overrode the God idea for my own good idea, went to the deli, and of course the machine was broken. They only accepted cash, right? Now, I know it's a little trivial example, and there was like no harm, no foul. It didn't mean anything except I had to get back in the car, I had to go find an ATM machine, I had to go find cash, come back and make my purchase. And had I listened to that still small voice, that little teeny tiny voice that just said, go past the bank and get cash for the purchase, I wouldn't have had to deal with all of that running around. Now, it's a shame because we get those God ideas all the time. And we do override them a lot of times because we have a better idea. You know what? That's that joke about, you know, we all want to work for God, but only as an advisor. We override those little voices in our heads all the time because we think we have a better idea. And if we remain open and we spend the time to cultivate that intimate relationship with the divine, it doesn't ever steer us wrong. But we always have our own agenda going. It's like we're in competition almost with God, and we always have our own agenda going. So I didn't listen. I went directly to the store, and then I wound up having to, you know, run around and do that thing. Like I said, it wasn't a big traumatic thing, but it was just yet another example of how that still small voice is with us always, and sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. You know, but the voice itself is always there. You know, so I'm the one not paying attention. You know, God is always there. I'm the one that wanders off. You know, do you get that feeling? Our intuition is very much like, I think of it sometimes like a lighthouse. You know how a lighthouse is just there by the shore, and it shines the light on us, and the light circles around, and sometimes it just shines directly on us, and we get that amazing insight. We get that spark of intuition. We get that aha moment of the revelation of truth, and then the light passes, right? The light moves on, and we're in the dark again, and then it's left up to us to decide, are we going to act on what we've been given, or are we going to override it? Are we going to override it? We are left to decide, what are we going to do with this aha that we've been given? You know, we go back into the fog bank of our own thinking to go figure things out on our own. But the more we court the divine, the more we open ourselves up to that, the more we make welcome that light in our lives, the more and the longer the light shines on us, on our situation, the more we can trust it. Right? Because isn't that what happens? I mean, really, isn't that the question that we have always in our minds? We get those little flashes of insight, and what is the question? How do I know it's really the voice of spirit? How do I know it's not just my own little ego mind, right? That's always the question we have. Well, how do I know it's a God idea and just not one of my big ol' ideas? Well, Ernest Holmes said this. I need a glass of water. No, he didn't say that. I did. Ernest Holmes said this in Lessons in Spiritual Mind Healing. He said, because of the diversity of ideas which are held in the subjective, it is not always possible to know whether we are following pure intuition or whether or not we are being led by subjective but unconscious thought patterns which have accumulated through the ages or through our own personal experience. Intuition would invariably be right if it were never hindered by subjective confusion. The best we can do at the present is to watch these actions and reactions very carefully, always working to know that pure intelligence alone leads, perfect love alone guides, and goodness alone controls. And that's our clue. That is what he's saying. That is the way we tell the difference between whether it is intuition, whether it's our own brilliant idea, or less than brilliant idea. Intelligence alone leads. Perfect love alone guides. Goodness alone controls. Fabulous guidelines. So relying on intuition means, hang on to your seat, it means trust and surrender. Yeah, don't y'all love that? 2 words we don't like hearing very much. Trust and surrender. You know, we get that illumination. The lighthouse is that light is coming around and it shines on us and we get it. We get that aha moment and then the light moves on and we're left in the dark to go, should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I act on it? Sometimes we just get it. Sometimes we just get it. And we don't know how and we don't know why. We just know that we know. We just know that we know. Sometimes we get exactly what we desire. Sometimes that flash of insight guides us exactly to where we need to be, and it's exactly what we think it's going to look like, and it all unfolds perfectly, and we get the parking spot, or whatever. Sometimes we get exactly what we want, but it's not in the same packaging we thought it would come in. And that's always interesting. Sometimes it's in a different city. Who knows? Sometimes we get a piece of the puzzle, but we don't get the whole picture. Sometimes intuition leads us to the next space, to the next stop, to the next step, and we still don't see the whole picture. It's about trust and surrender. It's about trust and surrender. It's about being comfortable in not knowing. Intelligence alone leads. Perfect love alone guides. And goodness alone controls. That's where trust and surrender come in. We can let go, not knowing, and trust the universe has our back. Breathe. Keep breathing. Because that's the part that really, really gets us hooked, isn't it? Because we have a better idea. Because we always have a better idea. No matter what God comes up with, we go, we can improve upon that. But really, it isn't. Ernest Holmes says this. He says, we must not be lukewarm in our conviction. We must know that we know. We must not be lukewarm in our conviction. We must know that we know. You know, finding the new home process that we're all engaged in right now is the process of trust and surrender. That's exactly what it is. What we're going through right now, it is a process of trust and surrender. Trust and surrender, step forward. Trust and surrender, step forward. Rinse and repeat. Trust and surrender, step forward. Keep doing those things. And we get closer and closer to the outpicturing. And it may not be what I expected. And it may not be what you expected. It may not be what we expected. It may not be what my ego wants it to look like. What I know is I trust and surrender. I trust and surrender all the time. And intuition guides us. And we keep saying yes, and we keep showing up. And hasn't each property that we've gone out and seen closer and closer and closer to our home. And closer and closer and closer to our vision that we started with at the beginning of this process back in, when did we do that visioning? January? I think. December. And each and every step in the process has gotten us closer because we keep surrendering. We keep surrendering to the greater good. We keep surrendering. We keep trusting. Spirit has our back. Spirit has our back. We let intuition be the guide. We let intuition be our guide because it is bigger than my idea. You know? Yeah, me, not going to the bank and not getting the cash. It's bigger than my idea. It's bigger than this group's idea. Think about this. Our ministry is bigger than we are. It is bigger than we are. It's bigger than our idea of it. It's certainly bigger than my idea of it. And who's in control of it? Yeah, God. Yeah, certainly not me. And we keep saying yes, and we keep surrendering, and we keep stepping forward. Because intuition is knowing that we know. Knowing that we know. Spirit will have its way with us. We're here along for the ride. But we have to do the work. We must not be lukewarm in our conviction. We must know that we know. We must know that we know. So, germs are ridiculous fiction. Intuition is God in human. Intuition is God in human, and it will not steer us wrong. And we surrender to a greater idea. And it's about saying, I don't know. And, we hate saying that. It's just really wrong not knowing. But to surrender and trust always to a greater idea of what Spirit has in mind for us. And to show up and to suit up and to continue to say yes. That's the path that we're on. That's the knowing that we know. That is the only knowing that we know. Is that God is in charge and all is well. That, I can know that. I can know that in the midst of not knowing anything else. In the midst of not knowing how this is going to come out. In the midst of not knowing what the answer is. In the midst of not knowing how the book ends. I can know God is in charge and all is well. And that's what knowing what we know is all about. It's all about that surrender and trust. We're on this marvelous path together. We're on this tremendous path called spiritual unfoldment. And we're on this next great adventure. And we don't know what it's going to look like. And we don't know where it's going to be or what it's going to be. But we know that what? God is in charge and all is well. God is in charge and all is well. I want to leave you with this. Ernest Holmes wrote in Can We Talk to God? He said, I believe in a religion of happiness and joy. There is too much depression and sorrow in the world. These things were never meant to be and have no real place in the world of reality. Religion should be like the morning sun sending forth its rays of light. It should be like the falling dew covering the land with fragrance and sweetness, like the cool of the evening and the repose of the night. It should be a spontaneous song of joy and not a funeral dirge. From the fullness of a joyous heart, the mouth should speak. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to be. That fullness, that joy, that passion. That's knowing what we know. That is being who we are. That is living the life of spirit that has no opposite. We are joy, it has no opposite. We are love, it has no opposite. We are abundance, it has no opposite. We are all of those things. That is living what we know, that is knowing what we know. And that is who we are. So this week I invite you to forget everything you know. Forget everything you know. And be reborn in this moment. Be reborn right here, right now. Into being God in form, into allowing that seed of perfection that is nestled within each one of us, allowing it to lead the way. Listen to that still small voice. Say yes whenever you hear it. It'll never steer us wrong. Live by faith and not sight, not senses, not logic, not cognitive ability, but live by intuition. Live by that. Allow that to guide us and lead us on to our greater good, because it'll never steer us wrong. It'll never steer us wrong. That's what I know. Thank you so much.